Hi, fellow viewers. This is our Cartoon Academy. And today we will talk about the animated series Mao Mao Heroes of Pure Heart from Cartoon Network. The first season was aired from July 2019 to July 2020. It consists of 40 11-minute episodes, and I have no idea when the second season will come out, or if it will come out at all. In this video I will break down the first season. Mao Mao and Badger Klops are heroes fighting various villains and monsters. Adorabat is a 5-year-old girl living in the Pure Heart Valley. The antagonists often fought by the main characters as sky pirates led by Lord Orangus Snake. Mao Mao dreams of becoming a legend. Previously, Pure Heart Valley was protected from external threats by the giant ruby of Pure Heart, but Mao Mao and Badger Klops crashed into the ruby, causing it to crack. Feeling guilty that the valley is now defenseless, Mao Mao decides that he must protect the valley. Mao Mao will worry that since he is now forced to defend the valley, he will not be able to become a legend. But later he decided that the protection of the valley would make him a legend, and began to look at his situation more optimistically. Adorabat wants to join the team of heroes, and the heroes all will not immediately agree. As I already noted, Mao Mao is a hero who dreams of becoming a legend. He has narcissistic traits, he has many complexes, and all these complexes can be explained by his childhood. Mao Mao comes from a family of great heroes. He always seemed small and weak against the background of his relatives, including sisters. He did not receive much validation from his father, and is now actively trying to get it, whether from his father or anyone else. For example, in the episode 7, Mao Mao was constantly trying to impress Blue. As we are made clear, this has to do with how, as a child, he tried in vain to impress his father. And in the episode 35, Mao Mao will be scared of puppets, which is more or less normal. But he also will stubbornly refuse to admit his fear. As we hinted, this is because in his family fear was at least ridiculed. In the episode 12, Mao Mao will get sick and will refuse to admit that he is sick.
Being sick means you're weak, and heroes aren't weak.
By the way, in the case of many complexes, Mao Mao tries to behave in accordance with a certain image of a hero. Obviously, this is because everyone in his family expected him to be a hero. But I also have a strong impression that this is an allusion to toxic masculinity. The need to be strong, not acknowledging one's feelings, and even refusing to take one's health seriously are obvious clues. As we see on the example of Mao Mao, the characters are interestingly written. For another example, let's take Badger Klops. He has a soft, calm personality. On the other hand, he is quite stupid, and he takes criticism with hostility. And he is also very smart. He is a mathematician. He is an inventor. Wait, this is incoherent nonsense. The creators seriously have not decided what his character is? With Mao Mao's personality, it's better. He is a well-developed character. In the case of Adorabat, at first it seemed to me that there were the same problems with her as with Badger Klops. Here, Adorabat behaves like an ordinary resident of the Pure Heart Valley. In this kingdom, which has long been protected from any threats, the inhabitants are cute, sweet, and infantile. However, in some moments we suddenly notice how she behaves abruptly, rudely, even cruelly.
No matter what I do, no one at school wants to be friends with me. Did you hear that? I'm nothing like the rest of you wimps!
But I was prompted to an important thought by this scene.
Discard anything that doesn't bring you joy!
Nothing brings me joy!
Besides the fact that Adorabot is different from the other inhabitants of the valley from the very beginning, and that she even takes the initiative to become a hero, there is another important factor in her character. Influence of Mao Mao. Somewhere it is positive as in the episode 33 or in the episode 34, but not always. And in these sense, for example, the episode 13 is important.
Is Adorabot giving up because she's been watching me do that this whole time? I should have been cheering her on instead of talking her down.
Mao Mao understands an important thing, thanks to which, unlike his family, he does not injure the child psychologically. Well, almost. By the way, since I mentioned the residents of the valley, the secondary characters in the cartoon are usually uninteresting. They are more decorations than personalities. The cartoon has a useful moral. Sometimes, as in the example with the above-mentioned storylines of Mao Mao and Adorabot, this is deep, complicated morality. Sometimes this is simple morality in separate, usually filler episode. But sometimes morality can be not that good. For example, in the episode Legend of the Turbo Clone, Mao Mao fights against popular superstition, and it will be presented as wrong behavior on his part. And to confirm their position, the authors present Mao Mao as inadequate, who at the end, for some reason, decided to just destroy the tree associated with superstition. However, at the end, after the denouement and before the end credits, the assumption that Mao Mao made earlier
Then it'll escalate. Riots, crashing cars, explosions.
comes true and chaos begins.
Babe, the Torbaclon caused an explosion! A series of explosions!
That is, we can assume that the creators do not show the situation so one-sidedly, although that final scene is more of a joke. Or take the episode Meet Tanya Case. The main conflict will be between Mao Mao and Tanya. Mao Mao will take execution of law seriously, and Tanya will think that
All rules are made up.
and the episode apparently believes that Tanya is right. When episode Sugarberry Fever ridicules Mao Mao's reluctance to eat pie because of the stupid hero code, I agree with morality. Yes, don't limit yourself to nonsensical old traditions. But I do not think that, as episode Meet Tanya Keys teaches, you can ignore all the rules and create lawlessness. But still, in general, morality in the cartoon as a whole is good. I take the logic of storytelling and physics in cartoon very seriously. And in Mao Mao this is bad, especially with physics. An interesting feature of the cartoon is the Mao Mao's combat technique. From his sword strikes, sometimes they are either rays of light or explosions, something like that. And they don't explain to us how it works. Is it magic? Or is it some kind of special fighting skills of Mao Mao? Maybe the sword is magical. Or maybe Mao Mao casts some magic by making strikes. In theory, the episode Weapon of Choice partially gives us the answer, but this answer is very vague. It was a deep episode advancing the line of Mao Mao's complexes, but I still expected a concrete explanation. What about the weapons of the other hero on the team, Badger Clops? They are mechanical. simple. And here the same problem arises as in many other cartoons. It's not possible to make such a robotic arm. So many weapons, including several bombs, will not fit in one robotic arm. And why can't Badger Clops, despite the idea of the episode 3, still supply the entire team with weapons? Also in the cartoon appears, I don't even know how to call it, something like esotericism. And how exactly does Orangus Snake functionating? Or let's look at the other problems with logic. For example, in the episode Sick Mao, Mao deliberately infected the dragon and was won. But it is obvious that the symptoms could not have manifested in the dragon so quickly. Do you know how in some cartoons creators come up with their own language, which differs from English only in the appearance of letters?
Beware the monster Bow Bow!
Here I have deciphered and transcribed the phrase for you. The animators simplified the replica and they also made a mistake. However, in itself, the logic of the story in the Mao, in comparison with many cartoons, is not that bad. But with physics, it is much worse. Here is the simplest example to explain through the law of conservation of momentum. Mao hits some monster, and the monster flies at least tens of meters away, maybe hundreds or even more. I guess the average density of the monster's body is comparable to that of Mao. The monster is several times larger than Mao in each of 3 dimensions, so the mass of the monster is probably many times greater than the mass of Mao. And Mao should have received the same impulse as the monster. In general, Mao had to fly away for kilometers. Yes, that would be if Mao was so strong that he could knock back a monster like that, which also sounds like nonsense. Even if Mao is some kind of trained hero. With physics in this cartoon, everything is really bad. The animated series is mostly filler. Some of the artistic techniques are very banal, like this obvious trick.
You lied about a government conspiracy. Just so what? You could give me the perfect adventure? Thank you.
But in general, fillers are more or less interesting. However, already in the first season, the plot begins to slowly move forward. By the way, in the first half of the season, the order of the episodes is messed up. This is especially noticeable in the case of episodes 17 and 20. After watching The Weapon of Choice, I immediately felt that it should be before the small. In the second half, it's fine, almost. So, about the plot, Mao gradually develops as a character. The episode Small should have been the 20th. That is the interim season finale. Mao's father will visit his son. The father will behave
passive-aggressive.
At some point, Mao will decide to stand up for himself.
Sometimes, when you're not around, I actually kind of like myself.
This is an important moment in the fight between Mao and his complexes.
Mao, my son, you are not small.
I think in the next season this storyline will continue to develop. Adora but also has episodes that reveal her as a character. They mostly do not yet add up to a coherent storyline. However, it is possible that Adora Bat's development in the first season was just a preparation for her line in the later series. The exception was the episode 37, Adora Dead. This touching episode is more of a plot. The character of Badger Klops is rather boring. But what the lines of Mao Mao and Adorabat will turn into in the new season is interesting. By the way, do you remember how the heroes broke the Ruby Pure Heart in the beginning? It seems like the consequences will not only be the lack of protection for the valley. In the episode, the Orangu Snake begins and zing your heart out. Ruby will give Orangu Snake and Adorabat respectively magical powers that will become a threat to the heroes and to the valley. Let's see how this line will turn out in the future. It is also likely that Mao Mao's relationships with either his father, sisters, Badger Klops, Tanya Keys, Orangu Snake, or Bao Bao will be important storylines. Also, it's been 2.5 years since the first season ended. After the release of the first season finale, the series was renewed for a second season. However, the production of the animated series was suspended, and from some of the platforms where the cartoon was released, it was removed altogether. There may never be a continuation. So, the animated series Mao Mao Heroes of Pure Heart is basically a filler animated series with a slow central plot. The cartoon is cute and mostly laid back. Psychological themes are raised in the animated series, and it is possible that later they will be revealed more. The cartoon carries mostly good and useful moral messages. Logic and in particular physics in the cartoon is at a very low level. Thus, the cartoon is far from a masterpiece but is watchable. We will wait to see if there will be a continuation. Now, I suggest you consider the option of like, comment and subscription. Goodbye everyone!